Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and I'm not gonna lie to you lovely people, I'm not in the best of moods here, as you can sort of infer by the fact that I have several white lines kind of intersecting behind me. I am of course about to talk about Denmark's song for Eurovision 2021, and but I'm getting ahead of myself. It's a duo consisting of Jesper and Laurits Emmanuel. Together they are Flamme, which can mean fire and flame, or possibly guy or furnace and flame, and as far as I understand it, that's more of a conceptual name for the group. It's not like, yes, I'm fire, he's flame. There's none of that going on. That's just the name of the duo, Flamme. The song is called Hinanden, which I wouldn't blame you if you looked at me and said, come again? But apparently Danish is just like that. I'd look at those letters and I'd think, over oss på hinanden. But apparently that's how they say it in Norwegian and not Danish, where they just run everything together into a big Katamari ball of language. As you might be able to infer from that, though, the song is presented fully in Danish. It will remain in Danish for Eurovision, the first time Denmark has done so since 1997. I mean, sure, we did get some Danish lyrics in Love is Forever a couple of years ago, but this whole song is in Danish, and the title means practice on each other. A little bit sus, but I'll come back to that. Music and lyrics by Laurits Emmanuel, and also, I have seen also Rune Borup being credited as a composer, but that name has since been removed from the credits, so I have no idea what happened there. And I wish that was the only problem I had with this song. So yeah, first impressions. Denmark, I am actually floored. I know this isn't quite what you were going for, but you've managed something of a scientific breakthrough with this song. You've managed to take a sample of approximately 180 seconds and make it feel like 8 hours! Yep, get all your giggles out of your system here and now, since I know this is exactly the sort of reaction that a troll act like this is going for. No, I'm not on board with this entry at all whatsoever, and I don't intend to make light of that. I'm not going to go on the warpath by any means, so if you like this song, more power to you. It's just, I don't. I really don't. I feel deeply insulted by this song. The whole package, to my ears, utterly fails to grasp what it means to pay homage to a period of history, and instead just settles for 3 minutes of inane drivel lifted straight from the rancid underbelly of the early 80s at best. And the biggest slap in the face is that it just radiates that kind of energy that makes me feel like they'd listen to this. They might even do a reaction video watching this review going, duh. They'd laugh in my face and go, it's only music, can't you take a joke? Well, for one, it's the Eurovision Song Contest, not the Eurovision Clown Contest. And for another, this isn't a joke. This is a very lazy and misguided attempt at a nostalgia satire kind of thing that no one outside of Denmark is likely to fully appreciate at face value, and it reeks of the potential for defensive condescension when anyone has the nerve to call them out on it. There are ways to do what this song is trying to do, and this sure as hell doesn't adhere to any of them. To reiterate though, that doesn't mean that I won't still give it a fair review, because it's a Eurovision song and I do fair reviews. The song isn't void of good things. For example, as much in the studio as in the live performance, this song actually has some very solid vocal harmonies throughout the performance, and I mean that both in reference to their harmonies with each other as a duo, and to the two of them harmonising with the backing vocalists. It's not an easy thing to do well at the best of times, but credit where it's due, they manage it, and they manage it consistently, so very well done there. And for what it's worth, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with it, but they do have a specific style and aesthetic in mind for this song and how they want to deliver it, and they do stick to it very rigidly. Their costumes, their sound, their staging, it's all there, for better or for worse. I can at least praise that the fourth wall remains intact for the duration of their performance. It only becomes a cynical, please laugh at me, that's my only appeal, kind of novelty song outside of the context of the performance itself. So taking the song in isolation does lessen that detraction by quite a bit. On the note of it sticking to a particular periodic style, fair play to them for having the nerve to declare that they will sing in Danish and they will keep it that way for Eurovision. Make no mistake, the choice of language isn't inherently a good or bad thing on the face of it. No country could change the language of their entry one way or the other for a free boost or subtraction of points. It's just that you might like that extra touch. Partially considering how relatively starved we are for linguistic diversity these days in general, and in the case of this song, it actually does serve a purpose beyond just being a gimmick unto itself. It actually does form a part of the aesthetic and the period and the throwback that they're trying to do. Putting all of these together, we end up with a remarkably earnest and sincere performance when all is said and done. Like I said, that is rather helped by the fact that any and all treatment of the song as the massive joke that it is only comes from outside of the performance and not during it. But it is what it is in that department. I can at least appreciate that when they hit the stage, they are doing the song justice. They save the "we're just doing it for a laugh" aspect for a time that doesn't directly encroach upon their time on the stage. So it could be worse. Whatever the case though, I'm unmoved, but I intend to remain fair here. On the negative side of things, I rather feel like this song has next to no progression to it, and as a result, it feels like it really drags its feet. Obviously, you might feel differently, but some people may well feel like this song goes on for a while. The song has about 2.5 different modes, as it were. There's the verses, there's the refrain, and there's the pre-refrain bridge. The verses and the refrain present very similar soundscapes and energy levels, and the bridges, though at least a bit more interesting, and, fair play to them, only account for about 10 seconds of the entire song. We have 3 minutes of song, and not a lot actually going on in that time, I find. The issue there is the attitude behind the song. Though the song itself, within its own diegesis, seems sincere enough, the context behind it is thoroughly, bitterly cynical. And speaking as a Brit, we can do without that, thanks. The song would sound at home in the era it was styled after, but the joke here is that they submitted it now, i.e. some 40 plus years after its glory days. That's the part that bothers me. This song so utterly fails to understand what it means to write in homage to a nostalgic style of music. This song is not nostalgic, it's just flagrantly, uninspiredly old-fashioned. Being performed in Danish doesn't help its case there, but that doesn't bother me personally, but still, it might be a factor for you. I figured it was worth mentioning. It might be another thing that furthers the whole disengagement factor, but in short, it's not a tribute to history, it doesn't do anything with the idea, it just turns up and goes, "I'm old, isn't that funny?" And no, it isn't. But that's their whole bit. Furthermore, and rather fitting of the music of the era it's aiming for, it's not just me, is it? The title is a massive and extremely lazy euphemism. Ooh, let's practice on each other. But just in case our parents are listening, we're talking about dancing and totally not anything more intimate or inappropriate, I promise. Like, sure, back in the day, songs would disguise their subtexts like that because tastes were much more sensitive and prudish. But nowadays, we live in a society that has sat through Anaconda, it's sat through WAP, or WAP, whatever that nastiness is. That sort of thing doesn't scandalise us anymore, so this whole situation just comes across as begging and screaming for attention over something that doesn't really merit it whatsoever. Please tell me it's not just me. I'm not trying to be a grumpy old man here. Well, whatever. Numbers time, I make the rules here. It should come as very little surprise that this gets a personal rating of 1 out of 10 from me. For those who are wondering, yes, this scale does technically go down to 0, but this song isn't so completely irredeemable as to merit quite that kind of response from me. After all, there are little pockets here and there that I can say, oh, fair enough, to. But in the grand scheme of things, they're kinda negligible. People do seem to be fond of misunderstanding my taste and assuming that because I feel this way, I must have this instinctive, intrinsic hatred of anything over 20 years old, and that is simply not true. What I don't have patience for is anything that exists just for the sake of it, but that behaves as though it expects praise for doing more than that. If I summed up this song, it wouldn't be old but with a new twist, or ooh, a fun little throwback, or anything like that. It would just be pretending to be old and expecting a reward for it. It's the musical equivalent of taking a leisurely stroll down an athletics track and demanding Olympic gold at the end of it. On the technical side, I can't go any higher than a 3 here, which I think makes this the lowest combined score I've ever given a Eurovision entry ever. The simple truth is, while it has an aesthetic and a period in mind, and it does achieve that rather convincingly, it seems to deliberately gloss over the fact that that is merely half the equation. What this song lacks is a so what factor. Okay, so you're ripping off old stuff in an attempt to blend in with them. Unless you plan on hopping back in time by half a century, you're going nowhere fast with that idea if that's all you intend to do. So you're attempting to pay tribute to a bygone era without understanding how tributes work. Great, how are you doing that? Just by copying that era without adding anything to it? No, that isn't good enough, I'm afraid. It strikes me as having a pet cat called Herbert and claiming that as a result, you are the human who discovered cats. When people say, well, no, we've already discovered cats, you just turn around and say, well, I discovered this cat called Herbert, I discovered Herberts. As if that's in any way equatable to discovering an entire species. Sorry not sorry, Denmark, but your lazy clownery just does not measure up. Now, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, I am far from impressed with the Danish broadcaster's way of handling the cancellation of last year, and the song has nothing to do with this, funnily enough. Denmark was another of the countries this year who received word of the cancellation of the 2020 contest, looked at their 2020 candidates, and went, too bad, so sad, go home and cry about it. That was already pretty heartless by itself, but in this instance, it kinda gets worse from a PR standpoint. As it turns out, Denmark's 2020 would have been representatives, Ben and Tan, actually did submit a song for Dansk Melodi Grand Prix this year, and the broadcaster just threw it back in the face. They rejected it. They later came out of the woodwork and claimed that that was due to the song not meeting the criteria for being sufficiently Danish in terms of the songwriting and production team, but earlier reports suggested that it was more a critique of the song's quality. The fandom at large, for what it's worth, seemed to think that their candidate song was substantially stronger than anything else in the DMGP lineup this year, but having heard neither that nor any of the songs that Flamme are up against, I can't really comment. I can only comment on what I've seen, and what I've seen isn't really a good look for the broadcaster. There's even some conspiracy theories that they sent deliberately weak Danish language songs so that this would go to Eurovision, get a poor result, and then, in the future, when people say, hey, can we have a song in Danish, the broadcaster can just turn around and go, no, because look how badly it went last time, as if the language is the sole contributing factor to this song being the way it is. But that's just a conspiracy theory, so put stock in it at your own risk. But will it make the final? To be clear, I never wish bad luck on anyone, and that applies here too. In fact, knowing how bloody-minded some viewers can be, I wouldn't totally rule out a qualification here in the first place. If people followed the patterns laid out by statistics, which is what I based my predictions on, then I wouldn't hold my breath for this, and if the juries did their jobs down to the letter, then that would be the final nail in the coffin. After all, the whole thing is a lazy court jester act that isn't funny to anyone outside of Denmark. However, between the novelty of it being in Danish, the very real notion that a bunch of viewers, including the jurors, might stare at it in slack-jawed wonder and think, oh, I remember this sort of thing from when I was a teenager, it might end up getting a worrying number of points. After all, my central criticism of Flamme failing to understand how satire works kind of bases itself on the notion that anyone else understands how satire works. In this instance, two wrongs can stack up in a trench coat and masquerade as a right. If someone listens to this and thinks, I remember the 80s, and completely misses that this song is just old for the sake of it and doesn't add anything to that, it might do scarily well, and I feel like it would be for the wrong reasons if it did, but that's just me. I know there are some people out here who stan this song, one of my friends has it as his personal first, and I'll pray for you, fam. But in all seriousness, listen to the song for yourself. If you disagree, that's completely fine. I will much more readily stan your right to disagree than I would support my own opinion, but my opinion isn't a very positive one here. Nevertheless, I do sincerely wish the two of them very good luck for when they get to the stage in Rotterdam, and maybe you can win me over. I wouldn't expect it, but stranger things have happened.